Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. I promised you a bonus podcast when news warrants, and agreeing to a deal with Ryan Fitzpatrick qualifies. So I brought on our Dolphins beat reporter from ESPN, Cameron Wolfe, to discuss all things Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's a quick listen, but you will learn. You can follow Cameron on Twitter at Cameron Wolfe, CameronWolfe. I tweeted out a story that Cameron wrote about Fitzpatrick during the season about how he's received in the locker room. Google it, find it on my Twitter timeline. It's there, it's good. You can read my work on ESPN.com. We have a free agent tracker throughout this period to provide news and analysis on every signing. Also, if you haven't listened to my podcast with former Washington running back Chris Thompson, please do so. He was excellent and insightful. You'll enjoy hearing from him. And while you're at it, don't forget to give us a rating wherever you can on Apple platforms, whatever. It's much appreciated. Before I get to Cameron, a couple things. Signing Fitzpatrick allows them to have a quarterback who can run this offense and distribute the ball at a proper way, which is key. They like that ball getting to 6-7 guys a game. If you're getting it down to 3 or 4 a game, it's not moving the way they want. And I think that's something that they liked with Alex Smith and something that they're going to like with Fitzpatrick. It helps receivers grow and develop, and it helps the offense move the ball. As you'll hear from Cameron, he's not a perfect quarterback. He is exactly who you think he is. But he does have redeeming qualities, and I do think they could draft a quarterback that he can then mentor. Or maybe a guy like Taylor Heineke becomes something more than what people in the league expect after learning under Fitzpatrick and getting more time in the NFL. A draft pick might be more likely, however. It's not a guarantee with the first pick, but it could happen, but do not pencil it in for that spot just yet. By the time you hear some of this, it could be outdated, but I'm going to share it anyways. I know they really like receiver Curtis Samuel. Washington tried to trade for him during the summer and before the deadline. Marty Herney, then the Panthers GM, prevented it from happening, and because they wanted to keep him there. But they also don't want to overpay for a guy who's not considered a number one receiver and maybe more of a gadget or a slot guy. Wouldn't shock me if they end up with him on a one-year deal, allowing him to hit free agency again next offseason. That's where having a quarterback who isn't afraid to throw helps. It can help build numbers for a guy, in this case, who needs to get those numbers to build up that ability to get a bigger contract. Another name to watch, Marvin Jones, also a fast guy, veteran, made a lot of money in his career, so he may not be looking for the same kind of situation that a guy who was looking after that first huge contract is. Again, this might be old by the time you hear it, so if it is, skip to the conversation. Finally, keep in mind that Washington must be aware of future deals so it can keep together as many guys on that D-line as possible while also paying big money to Terry McLaurin in a couple of years. Yes, he's going in his third year, so next year would be his last year, and then after that it's free agency, so they want to make sure they can keep him around. Yes, you can juggle a lot. Yes, salary cap space can be maneuvered. Cash flow is king. It's always been king. And it doesn't have to preclude it from happening, but it is something that I'm telling you that they're aware of, and you just can't do everything. So if you go out and sign a guy to this monster deal who maybe isn't worth that or isn't viewed that way, it just makes it harder to keep a guy like McLaurin. They also know it's a good draft for offensive linemen and receivers, plus they do like some tight ends in the draft class. That allows you to walk away from overpaying a guy in free agency if you don't want to. But they also know you can't just walk away from everything. You've got to be able to fill some needs now. The free agency is great for filling needs. The draft is great for building a talent base, and that's how you need to operate. Anyway, that's it. After this break, let's get to my conversation with ESPN's Cameron Wolfe. Why is Ryan Fitzpatrick fun to watch and cover?
Interruptions happen, not unlike this ad. But success isn't measured by how much work you get done. It's about how you and your small business handle curveballs. That's where Lenovo comes in. Lenovo provides small businesses with the tools they need, like the ThinkBook Plus with dual screens, to help you get refocused faster and get more time on your side. Reliable technology, improved connectivity, functionality, major flexibility. With the right technology, you can take on interruptions like a boss, be more productive, and feel good about what you achieve and work through in just one day. Give your business a competitive edge and turn sorry to bother you into innovative solutions for how people really work. Learn more at lenovo.com/get time on your side.
Welcome back. Now here's my conversation with ESPN's Cameron Wolfe. Well, Cameron, I just want to give Washington fans a little bit of a feel for what they have now in Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I would suggest, and I tweeted this out, for them to go back and read your story that I think you wrote during the season about what teammates and others think of him. But in general, what is Washington getting with Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Well, simply put, a magician. He's a fun guy. I'm not going to sell you guys that he's going to be this savior who takes you back to the promised land. He hadn't made the playoffs in his career, so it would be the first time for him. But I will tell you this, you're going to have a lot of fun watching Ryan Fitzpatrick. Over the last couple of years in Dolphins land, in 2019, it was probably one of their worst seasons, but Fitzpatrick made it, especially in the second half of that year, where people enjoyed watching that team. He's a great teammate. Everybody I've talked to in the locker room loves him. He's truly the best way I can describe him, just sort of as a guy, is he's one of the guys. Typically quarterbacks have a shield up. They want to be a little separate. They're a little bit more, higher than the rest of the group. Fitzpatrick isn't that way. He loves to eat lunch with the tight ends, the running backs, the receivers. He's really self-deprecating. He's self-aware of who he is. He knows he's a journeyman quarterback who's probably going to get replaced at any given moment. But he relishes his moment and he loves to play. I talked to him maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I, asked him the question he gets asked every year. Hey, is this it for you, man? 16 years. And he's like, man, I love to play. So if somebody gives me a chance to play, I'm going to lace up the cleats and do it again. So it looks like Washington's going to give him a chance to play, at least early on. And I think that it's a really good fit for him. He played well last year. I know there was a lot of discrepancy on whether he should have been benched for Tua and whatnot. Ultimately, Tua was going to be the guy here eventually, and they wanted to start the clock. But Fitz did nothing to lose that job. And he was perfect as a mentor and on the field. So I think regardless of whatever role you see him in, as your QB1 leading you to the playoffs or as just a mentor for whoever's next, I think he's a good fit as a stopgap for those roles.
And, it's funny you bring up the playoff thing, too, because last year, if they keep him in that role, do you think they ultimately make the playoff? I know it's a hypothetical, but the way he was playing and the way they were going, do you think that they would have done that?
I think there's one game they lost in Denver last year where they played really, really poorly offensively, and Tua was the starter. If Fitz started that game, I think that he could have won that game, and they were one game away from the playoffs. So I think you could realistically say that. I mean, there's other factors there. Tua started 9 games. Sure. Does Fitz win all those games? I don't know. But, yeah, I think Fitz may give them one more win last year than Tua did, and that gets you to 11-5 instead of 10-6, and you're in the playoffs. So, yeah, I think that if Fitz plays the whole year, and plays at the level he was, they probably make the playoffs.
And why is he – I think I can probably answer this myself, but for you, why was he fun to watch?
I think the thing about him is he's a gunslinger. I always joke that Fitz's mentality is somebody's going to catch this ball. It might not be my guys, but somebody's going to catch this ball.
That's a great way to put it.
He's not a check down quarterback. He's a guy who's going to be aggressive, especially if he has playmakers he trusts. Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, F1, whatever nickname he ends up, having there. He's going to love him because he's always going to give him a chance to get the ball. Devontae Parker had a lot of success with Ryan Fitzpatrick because he loves to throw those 50-50 balls. That's his best thing. He loves to keep plays alive and throw plays, those 50-50 balls down the field. So I think that you're going to have a lot more big plays, which obviously is fun for fans. And he's a guy who really has no regard of his body. To be a 38-year-old guy, I've seen him run towards the goal line, lower his shoulder, and try to run somebody over and get to the end zone. And I was afraid he wasn't going to get up, but he got up. So I just think the way he plays, he sort of has a Pop Warner style of play where it's just fun with him. It looks like he's a guy where 10 years from now, if you need a pickup quarterback to be your all-time quarterback in a flag football game, he'll just come jogging in and be that guy. So I think for me, that's fun to watch. I know if you're counting on him to be, playoffs and this much, he may frustrate you at times with some of his decisions. But I think ultimately it'll be more fun than sorrow for however long he's the guy there.
It sounds like energy is a big word for what he brings.
Yeah, absolutely. In the locker room and on the field. I mean, I talked to guys. You mentioned the piece I wrote earlier. The thing that kind of struck me every time I talked to guys, they talked about how he made them better. how when they got on the field with him, it felt a different energy. No matter if they were down 20 or up 20, he's always that fun, loose guy. And for whether you have for the Dolphins, it was a really, really young locker room who was trying to learn how to win, and he made things a lot less serious. Brian Flores is a really hard-nosed coach. He runs them sometimes to the ground a little bit in practice, and Fitz is a guy who's just like, hey man, this is a kid's game. And I think that energy is really important for players, especially for a guy that is going to be productive on the field, that, hey, we can do what we need to do and play hard, but we can still have the energy where we're enjoying this and having fun.
He also, I think the mentorship role too is probably something that he may end up doing here, because this does not preclude them. Actually, I can see them drafting somebody to maybe for him to mentor. How was he in that role with Tua?
I think he was very good. The thing about Fitz is if you're willing to learn, he's willing to teach. He didn't have a lot of success with Josh Rosen, because I don't think Josh Rosen was in a position where he was willing to learn. He was really in to compete with Ryan Fitzpatrick mode. So I don't know if the mentor relationship went great there. But with Tua, I think Tua was really eager to learn. I think he didn't come in with any entitlement. And I think that's the thing with Fitz. If you're willing to, learn and know that you don't know more than him, he's willing to show you the way. He's going to compete with you on the field. And I don't know if you guys remember midway through the season when he got benched, he was really emotional, saying that he felt like, it kind of got taken away from him. So he's not going to be the guy who just sort of, lays out the rose petals for the rookie to come take the job from him. But I think as far as the behind the scenes, particularly with a developmental quarterback, he's going to show you how to learn defenses. He's going to show you exactly what's going on with the offense and what you need to do to see what he's seeing. So I think for that factor, particularly if the Washington ends up drafting a guy maybe in the middle rounds that wants to sit, he's going to be perfect, because you can see on the field and in the meeting room what he does well and take whatever good you see from him.
And then one thing that I found interesting in the article that you wrote on him, talking to all those guys, was from Chan Gailey, the offensive coordinator, because he had him in Buffalo too. And it seemed like he felt like he was a different, even though he'd been playing a while already then, that he was a different quarterback when he got him in Miami. Is that your sense? And if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. It's weird because you often see quarterbacks at this age, take a real descent. I mean, like, unless you're Tom Brady, you're not playing almost to 40 and still playing. But it seems like maybe because of the arc of his career, he's seeing an ascension in his career. I think he's probably played his best football over the last, 3 years of his career. And I think the big thing, and I'll talk to Chan about this, is that his accuracy got better. We've always known Fitz to be this gunslinger. That's not new. He's always been that. But I think everybody sort of always knew him as he's either going to throw 5 touchdowns or 5 interceptions. And I think over the last couple of years, he's decreased those interceptions. He's increased his accuracy while keeping some of that gunslinger mentality. So I don't know if there was something he did, or maybe just the comfort and playmakers that he had in Miami, but I think he really found a way to curb some of his chances and make, smarter chances when he took those chances. So I think that's the biggest thing that maybe Chan was referencing with his growth, is that it's not always, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Sometimes it's 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And that never happened early in his career. So I think you'll get more of that from him, which obviously is better for the offense.
And did you see times like that? Because I remember when Washington played Tampa a couple of years ago, and Tampa was moving the ball up and down the field, he kept throwing picks. Could you tell times, even like when you're watching him, that like maybe he goes somewhere else with the ball because something wasn't there, that was he not forcing it as much, or was he sometimes getting fortunate?
Yeah, I think he was smarter in not forcing it. I think what really helped him is he had 2 big jump ball receivers in Miami, and Devontae Parker and Preston Williams. Both of those guys are 6'3", 6'4" receivers. Right. So I think he learned to take his chances with those receivers and not with every receiver. Whereas I think early in his career, he would have, 5'9" receivers. I remember when he was at Tampa Bay, he would throw a lot of jump balls to Deshaun Jackson, who's you guys know out there in Washington, he's a speed guy, but he's, 5'10" receiver. So if you're throwing a jump ball, up to Deshaun Jackson, you're more likely than not going to get an interception if the DB's even. Whereas, bigger receivers have a better chance. So I think he took his chances and more selective receivers that he felt like could win that opportunity. And yeah, I think he got really smart in making quicker decisions. Like, he still has those deep longer plays, but I think he really learned to manage an offense and say, hey, I'm going to take this 10-yard slant pass versus holding it and trying to go for that 30-yard go route, on every single play.
Cameron, that's great stuff. I think the key here is for Washington fans, sometimes you're just going to have to hold your breath when he's dropping back. But it did seem like, just in looking at the numbers, his numbers were better in terms of touchdown to interception ratio. So we'll see. But I appreciate the insight and the honesty too, because you can't sit here and say he's the answer.
Absolutely.
But there are going to be some things where you say it's fun to see this.
Right.
Losing isn't fun. But I think it'll be fun. It may be fun along the way. It'll be quite a journey. Thanks for joining me, man.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, John.
Support for this podcast comes from State Farm, the good neighbors who offer you surprisingly great rates on your home and car insurance. State Farm agents are great at helping you personalize your insurance to match your needs, plus an award-winning app that makes the whole insurance process surprisingly great. So if you're looking for a surprisingly great rate that comes with a lot of other surprisingly great things, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
What's up? It's Mike Jones from the Football Jones podcast. I know you're enjoying your time with the John Keim Report, but once you're done, I want to invite you to come over and check out my podcast. Each week, we take a deep dive into some of the most pressing topics around the NFL. High-profile guests from the coach, player, and front office ranks, as well as the top league insiders. Check out the Football Jones podcast, another fine product brought to you by Empire Media.
That's it for this episode. I told you it would be quick. Thanks to Cameron for joining me, and thank you for listening. I'll be back with another episode later this week or as news warrants. Talk to you next time.